Okay everybody, today I'm going to show you how I process my planetary pictures in Startools. Startools is a software some of you may be familiar with, some of you may not. I think most of the time it's used for deep sky processing, but you can use it for planetary. I'm going to assume at this point that you already have stacked your image in a program such as Autostakkert or Registax or something of that nature, and save the photo as a TIFF file. We can do TIFF files, or we can do uncompressed TIFF files, or can do FITS files in Startools. So you'll need to have one of those two types of files. So you're going to go to the folder where your stacked image is. We're going to open that file. You're always going to come up to this screen when you open up your image. In the case of the planetary image, I find what works best is use the nonlinear option on this image. You can try it other ways, but I find that when I use the other options, the picture is kind of blown out from the beginning when I first open it. So we're going to go to the nonlinear, and then we're going to use the button that says attempt to reverse stretch and activate tracking. What you're going to come up with is you're going to come up with a picture that looks a little bit dark, and what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the develop button. Now when it comes to deep sky stuff, I always use the digital development bar right here. I don't use that on the planetary. What I find works best on the planetary is to go to the gamma instead. Now remember, you can always go back at later stages and redo this in Startools, so if you don't hit it perfect on the first time, you can go back later on and you can make adjustments to it as you see fit without really losing any of your work. So I'm going to make an adjustment on my gamma, and I'm going to do that, and as soon as I do that, then I'm going to go down to my crop option. Now, I've already worked with this picture a couple times, so it remembers where I set it to crop. But if you want to crop it differently, you just start in the top left corner and you drag a box, and it gives you a little set of crosshairs so that you can figure out where you want your cropping at. And then when you figure out where you want it, you just simply hit the keep button, and that will crop your image for you. Now, after this, the next thing I do is I go to the decon button, the deconvolution, and on here you're going to select the option that says do not create mask, lunar, or planetary. So we come into here, a lot of times with the default settings it won't give you enough movements, enough area to play with, so I like to change the iterations down here to about 10. It's going to take a minute to change that, and then we can start adjusting the radius that we're going to use. Now you can see the image right now. It looks pretty much like it did coming out of Autostakkert or Registax, whichever one you used. Now, just to show you what happens if you push it way too far, I'm going to push it all the way to the max end. Now when it gets done here, you're going to see that the picture starts looking all crazy, and see what it looks like when it's just completely overdone. All kinds of artifacts, the ring around the planet, and all of that good stuff. So basically your radius is anywhere from 1 to 20. You can play around with all the values in there. You go too far, you end up with the ring around the planet, all kinds of artifacts. You don't go far enough, it still looks blurry like it does coming out of Autostakkert. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to make this one absolutely perfect, because I'm really just trying to put together a workflow for some friends just to show them how I generally do this. So I think that what I found works best on this picture is somewhere around in the 12 range. So I'm going to shoot for this picture. a good way to do it is to look for the ring around the planet, see if you could see it, you know, and also sometimes there'll be a ring on the planet if it's underexposed on the edges. But look for things like the ovals that you have on Jupiter and things like that to help you determine when you have this right. I'm going to stick with this setting right now, call it close enough, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit the keep button. And that's basically going to give us our image right there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the sharpening. Sometimes this helps, sometimes it doesn't. So you go in here, let it do what it does. I'm going to adjust the small detail bias all the way up to 100. That's where I typically do this. Now, a lot of times it's going to look completely overdone, but this time it didn't come out too bad. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the two biggest scales on here. I don't use those. They tend to make everything look really over processed, so I tend to only use the top three on this. Now, the different scope setup, different camera you have, different pixel sizes, that may which ones you're going to use may change, just like it would in Registax or some other programs with the wavelets. So once you have this, you can adjust anywhere over here, anywhere from 100% all the way up to wherever you want to put it. Anything that you, if you push it too far, you're obviously going to end up with artifacts just like we did in the deconvolution stage. I tend to stick right around 200, seems to work on my camera scale, but this is going to be a little bit different for everyone. Again, I'm going to change this just to make these differences more exaggerated, but on most every screen of Startools you have a before and after. So you have this box up in the upper right hand corner. It's your before and after button. So you click the before, shows you what it looked like when you went into it. Click the after button, it shows you what it looks like now. I'm not real sure that the sharpening really helped me out a whole lot in this instance. So I'm probably just gonna leave it at the way it was before I went into it. So in that case, if you don't want to use it, you're just going to hit the back button. Back button, and then to cancel. It's going to put you back to where you were. As I was telling you earlier in the process, on the develop stage, you can always go back, and if you think that the exposure is wrong, you can go back and you can change this. You do that by going back into develop, and you're going to use the redo global stretch instead of the stretch as is. So if you do the redo, you can see the effects of your deconvolution and everything, but the planet's back to being dark. So now you can go back, make adjustments with your gamma or your digital development, whichever you choose to use. I think on a planet it pretty much always works better with the gamma. So I didn't make any changes there. I decided to leave it as is. Now we can go into the contrast. On the contrast, again, you have the before and after images up here if you want to use that. The aggressiveness is typically set way too high when you go into this, and it's gonna make the planet look all crazy and stuff. So typically I drop that down into the 40s level. It's going to prompt you to hit the do button. So in this case, it looks like it needs to go down a little bit lower, still getting a lot of the dark spots. Okay, so that got rid of most of the super dark areas that were created by the over aggressiveness. Now you got a couple more over here, and depending on your image, they may help or they may not. You may just leave them alone. The exposed dark area sometimes is going to help you on the outer part of the planet, so that you can bring up the brightness of the outer part of the planet without bringing up the brightness of the center of the planet. Sometimes it helps us, sometimes it doesn't. Again, just like before, we could use our before and after on here, so it shows that this is what it looked like before, this is what it looks like after. I don't really like what it did to my picture, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that back off. There are times that that setting helps, but in this case I don't think that it helped us any at all. And then we have the compensate gamma button on here, which doesn't look like it had a lot of effect on this picture at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn that back off and leave the picture the way it is. The next thing you can go into, I think most of the time it tends to hurt a picture rather than help it when it comes to planetary, but you have the HDR tool. If you go in, if anything on Jupiter, especially if you look like you're maybe a little overexposed in the middle or something like that, you can hit the reveal button. It may bring out some of the details in the middle. I find that it pretty much never helps on Saturn. In this case, it really looks like it just created a bunch of stuff that may not really be there on the planet. So just kind of looks like noise. You can adjust the strength down here, the detail size and radius. I'm not going to do that because I've already played with this picture and it's just not helping this picture. I think sometimes the better your picture is, the more these things help. This is not exactly one of my best pictures, so we're just going to go into cancel and we're going to undo what we've done here. The next thing I'm going to do after this is I'm going to go into the color tab. When we go into the color tab, it makes some kind of automatic adjustments. A lot of times what I find on my images is maybe it brings up the blue a little bit too much, but we do have the option. We can change our saturation. I like to drop down the dark saturation on it and leave the regular saturation amount. I like to leave it pretty much where it is. The dark saturation, eliminating it, kind of gets rid of the bright reds. On the right hand side, we have sliders. We have the red bias reduce, the green bias reduce, and the blue bias reduce. Now we can change up here. We can change whether these sliders are adding color or removing color. The default is that it's removing color, so maybe there's a tad bit too much blue in this one. So I'm just going to go up here and I'm just going to reduce the blue just a touch. If you go too much, you'll start having to remove the red and the greens as well. If you want to fine tune it, it has the positive and the negatives rather than you just trying to grab the slider and doing big chunks of it. You also, on the left hand side, you have the cap green option. I use this a lot on the deep sky, and usually it looks good if I cap it to brown. On the planet, it's really it really doesn't really seem to do a whole lot for me. On Jupiter in particular, if I cap it to brown, it turns everything way too red. If I cap it to yellow, it really doesn't seem like it's doing a whole awful lot for me. So we're just going to leave it with the color the way we have here. Now you have different options over here on the left. You have the scientific color. You have the artistic with detail awareness. and you have the artistic without the detail awareness. Personally, for the planets, I like the scientific one. I think it looks a little bit better. And again, just like the other screens, we have the before and after. So right now we're looking at the before picture before it adjusted the color. And now it's after it made its adjustments, and I just kind of fine-tuned it just a little bit. So when we're done with this, we're just going to hit the keep button. And the last thing that I'm going to do to this picture is I'm going to go up and I'm going to turn the noise tracking off. We turn the noise tracking off, and it's going to prompt you. You can do either stop your tracking with no noise reduction, or you can stop your tracking and do your noise reduction. So now it's going to pull your image up on the screen, and it may look a little bit dull or blurry. You can adjust the grain size down here at the bottom. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it here, or whatever you do here can be undone on the next screen, because you're going to have the option again. I just kind of put it where it looks reasonable, a lot of times around 2.5 pixels. Okay, so now on this this last page here, this is going to give you the opportunity to adjust your read noise compensation and a couple other settings on here. Again, like I said, you can change your grain size on the just like you did on the last page. I think I'm going to bump this one up to about 3 from the 2.5. Once my eyes got away from it a little bit, I think it looks a little bit better, a little bit higher. And the slider right here is going to allow you to just kind of fine-tune how smooth your image is and things like that. Again, you have the before and after up at the top. So you're going to play with these sliders here. Your color detail loss, your brightness detail loss, all of these things can affect how smooth your image looks at the end. So when you get your image to where you're happy with it, what we're going to do is we're just going to hit the keep button one more time. And this is far from a perfect picture, and like I mentioned earlier, this is definitely not exactly my best video footage of Jupiter. I'm having a little bit of problems with the camera setup I'm using, and also seeing wasn't exactly perfect that night. My collimation on my scope may be a little bit off. So unfortunately, my best data, I lost it in a laptop that was involved in a flood, so I don't have that to process, or you'd get a lot better looking picture than what we have right now. So now that we're done, if you'd like to, like I mentioned earlier, you can go back here and maybe make adjustments to your image if you want to. So you go back into the develop, and if you want to just bump it up or down just a tad, you can do that. I'm pretty much just going to leave it about where it was at and hit the keep button. And from this point, we're going to save the image. And just for everyone's knowledge, you could also do this if you have a monochrome camera. You can do the LRGBs. You can open it up and load all 4 images into it. Before you do that, you're going to need to derotate those images with WinJuPost. So when we one little quirk about the Startools is that you can do JPEGs or you could do TIFFs, but you have to tell it. You have to actually enter the file extension that you want to use on the picture. It won't do it on its own. So now you have your picture saved, and there can definitely be some variations to this workflow. This is just what I've figured out works for me and my scope setup. So hopefully this helps you out. Startools is available for right around $50 US on the website. There is a free trial that's available that's fully functional. You can do anything in it except save the picture. So if you want to play with it for a while, go over to startools.org and download the fully functional program, and you can play with your deep sky images and planetary images alike. Now, for deep sky images, there's out there a what they call an unofficial Startools guide that has a starter's workflow for deep sky that you can use on that, or otherwise you can start with what I have right here for the planetary. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel if it's going to be helpful, or you just want to see pictures of planets and stars. Thanks again.